Africa will teach you more than you could ever teach it, you know. So
Right.
go to Africa to help those people. No. That's not the case. The crew situation is magical because we had some volunteer crew. One of my people from New York paid his own way to come to Rwanda to work with us. But the Rwandan electrician, for example, he's so beyond anything that an electrician would have to do here. He took apart machines and put them together when the electricity went out. You know, like, I mean, people are saying they're stunned. Like, that kind of just technical know-how, because they've had to survive in the midst of, you know, it's just absolutely magical and beautiful. The infrastructure was pretty different. There's no equipment that we needed. And so one of our producers put money in his pocket, went to Kenya, Uganda, and another country, packed a truck filled with anything he can get to drive back to Rwanda while we started shooting the first 3 days, everything we could do exterior with just the sunlight. And this was because the crew had figured out this is the only way this is going to happen. Us kind of like grooving together, building nets, building this, and that type of MacGyverism was just a beautiful journey, and we learned to work within our limitations. And as far as the vision, and that's the key. Like that, people talk about why is diversity important, man. Like, you don't know what you don't know, you know. And being in a place like that, our perspective of Rwanda, before we get there, Rwanda is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Like, literally, physically beautiful. The people are beautiful. It's a magical place, actually. Our perceptions of it are very different. But being there in a place that had just survived, had a genocide 15, 16 years ago, you're like, you know, it changes how you walk around, how you look at people, how you deal with things. But because they have made a conscious decision culturally to forgive and to move on and to move forward, there's a peace, there's a calm, but there's also a very conservative aspect to the culture. They don't talk about sex, they don't show sex in their movies, they don't show, you know, in general. It's kind of a negative thing for art. But when I was writing the script, you know, for example, I had a scene where a girl's hooking up with a boy. And my Rwandan executive producer says, oh, we don't really do that here. We don't show those type of things. And I was pissed off. I was angry. I was like, man, Quetta, this is art. You know, I want to see these black people embrace because it's a love story. We don't see that often. I just really want to see these African kids kissing. And you know, after I calmed down and got my second breath, I went back to the script and I wrote my version of the makeout with his limitations, his cultural limitations in mind. And I just had one character. And it just became just this beautiful moment in the film because of that cubicle I had to work in. Absolutely. The limitations, respecting the culture and working within that culture. Now what did I do? I ensured that this film now speaks to Rwandans and Americans to a certain extent, and not just what I wanted it to do as far as fulfilling my own personal needs. You know, and so that type of thing is a beautiful thing when you're, you know, collaborating.
And the interesting part about it, we were all really immersed in the memory of the genocide because of the fact that our crew was all from Rwanda, and it was a daily process of memories being, you know, brought up, and a kind of a ripple effect now for us, and carrying this movie, you know, around the country and around the world. You know, we had people, I mean, one guy left set and we couldn't find him, and it was because, you know, he was reminded of his parents being slaughtered in front of him. You know, one of our other actors, you know, actually couldn't get in touch with his anger, Naki, right? You know, he was had been thrown into
He couldn't get angry to do a scene because he had suppressed that piece of himself, but we had to get this scene out, and so I had to carry the weight for months of making this guy angry so he could act in this moment. Like, I mean, so it was not just cultural, it was the emotional weight, you know, and by the way, we were respectful, and this was a choice, and everyone was cognizant of the process, but these are just some of the realities of working in that particular place.
And even being respectful, in some ways becomes a limitation, because you can't just go like, all right, let's go talk about this, or
Yeah, you can't keep shooting if the entire if something happens traumatically to somebody who lost all my crew had lost their parents or families or whatever. I can't just keep going, so I have to stop. It doesn't matter about time right now.
Right.
Let's stop. Let's wait and let them come back when they're ready. We'll continue. And unfortunately, they talked about some of the other films that had come through where that wasn't the case, where they never felt respected, where they never felt like it was about their stories, and it also helped. Actually, it's with the language thing. 4 languages are spoken in Rwanda, and it's one of those places where you get off the plane and you say hi to somebody, and they might not know. You don't know what language that person is going to speak, and so there's English, French, Swahili, and Kinyarwanda. Everyone speaks Kinyarwanda. Several people speak Swahili, and some people speak English, though it's now the official language, and everyone pretends they speak English, but they just nod their head. They really don't. But because I had English and French at least, there were people on our crew who didn't speak any English, so I could communicate with it was just like a web of communication, and that. I mean, I don't know, that also added a beautiful dynamic. So it became about the visuals, the story, and not just the...
I find this very interesting that people who had worked with this same idea in Rwanda had not been respectful of the local people and the local culture. And I'm wondering, when international crews go to shoot somewhere, do they have a background in training where they're being told, we have to be respectful, or do they just say, we're the filmmakers, we're going to do it our way, and everyone has to accept it because we're the professionals? Or, I mean, is this common? It sounds like this was unusual, what you went through, being sensitive to the culture.
I think it starts from the top up, but film people are there to make movies first and foremost. There are a lot of documentarians who get off the plane and shove a camera in someone's face and expect a beautiful story to be told without learning them and getting to know them. They're really amazing documentarians who do the opposite and connect with people first and foremost. You go to Rwanda right now, and there's 1 million people with cameras doing 1 million stories. And you know what they're doing? Tell me how much you suffered.
Yeah.
Living in Africa, I go, so what do you want to talk about? It's a very different scenario. So I got stories that you normally wouldn't get. But it's still a business. We still have to make a deadline. We still have to make a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And if my actor wasn't angry, I had to get him angry. So it's like you can't. You still got to make our deadline.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance, but I think it does come from up top. And respect is respect, no matter what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we had talked about was the fact that so many filmmakers really consider the genocide a commodity. And you go into Rwanda, and that's the film you're making. If you're making a Rwandan film, you're making a film about the genocide. And we hope to kind of like step away from that a little bit, through this and to help with that healing process and stuff. But it was really interesting. One of the days I was walking through Kigali with our associate producer, and he starts pitching me on this action adventure, speaking of crossing borders with films, and just, well, it's this, Rwandese woman, and there's an American guy, and then there's this Rwandese guy who, escapes prison in America, and he comes back, the American guy has to, and he's telling this wonderful story, and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if those are the films, that are coming out of Rwanda? Wouldn't it be nice if now that's what's happening, instead of reaching, let's just go back and make that movie now.
That's what they want. They want to make action movies. They don't want to hear this genocide stuff anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.